Good day, dear students. We have been going through the short story of Temsila Ao, the name of the short story being Labor for My Head. We have seen how Lentina, a woman, a married woman, and later a widow, tried to have something for herself, which is not relished by the others. They think that she is crazy because of her crazy ideas. We have seen how she overcomes one difficulty over the other, and somehow when she starts trying to reach her goal with all her might, fate or even God sides with her in the form of her friend's son, who really wanted to sell a piece of land that she wanted to buy. So here you find that she had planned everything, and the rule was that a single person cannot own a land for the cemetery. It must be owned by either the town council or by the church. She rejected the church. She wanted the town council to have it, and for that she drew up an elaborate and carefully worded agreement, and this she did with the help of her nephew. And while she was expecting the visit of the town committee, and as expected they came, and they were trying to tell her the delicacy of that matter. And then she said, okay, no need to tell me about it, just go through this, and gave the agreement. They were so surprised because they were expecting a lot of opposition, but somehow or other, even before they could voice it, she just closed their mouth with all her the agreement and the 4 conditions that she put forward, along with the land that she owned, given freely to the town committee. That was generous, and about this generosity they can't speak up. The only thing is that she must be given the first chance to choose a spot for herself in that particular land. She doesn't want a place to bury her in the crowded cemetery where her husband is buried, and next to him the land is already there. And very coolly she said, whoever comes next, one of the sons, whoever, a relative, they can have that place. She doesn't mind, because in life she had been with her husband. She doesn't want to be with him in that cemetery just to show the people that they were together. It's not for her. She wanted something else, and this is something that she had planned, that is, she had chosen a spot, and both Babu and Lentina went to visit the cemetery and planted 2 plants, laburnum plants, and one just languished away, or it didn't come up well. And there was the time when Lentina was seriously sick, so he was also anxious for her health, and somehow or other she recovered, and Babu was happy that the other plant is surviving. Moreover, there was a small sprig of flower that year, but he didn't try to give this news to her to his mistress, because on hearing that she will be desirous of seeing this for herself. Moreover, no one will report this to her, because the cemetery is in an enclosed wall, and no one passing through the road will be able to see this small sprig of flower from there. So Babu kept his secret, and he thought that the next year, when the time comes when the tree will be taller and the flowers profuse, people will see it from the road, and then he will tell his mistress. That was the time to tell his mistress about the laburnum that she had planted. She had several disappointments with the laburnum, and that too in her garden, where she really cared for it. And now in a cemetery she is hoping against hope that there will be a laburnum. and so that's why she planted two. At least one should survive. And Babu knew this, but he kept this as a secret, and he knew that he can't hold it back next year because the tree will be taller and the flowers will be profuse. People will see it from the road, and then they will tell the mistress, that is Lentina, as is usual with all the people, that there is indeed a laburnum flower there. And then before they could tell her that, then he will tell his mistress that the laburnum had really flowered. Here the short story writer is indeed just giving us something to think about other than the main story. The main story is Lentina's desire to have the laburnum for her burial ground. Okay. Then Temsila over here assesses the relationship between Babu and Lentina. He wanted his mistress to live longer, but he longed to give the good news with the next year's blooms, not this year's small sprig, because she will not be satisfied with that. But the thing is that Babu and Lentina, Babu was a servant and Lentina is the mistress. They kept that decorum. But more than that, when she is a widow, she needed the help of so many people to get things done, and her sons are not in a position to help her because they are so busy and they have their own household to look after. She has so many servants in the house, but they have their own work. Babu the driver is the only person free from all this hassle. So this is the reason why Lentina had chosen Babu to be with her, because he is the driver. He can take her to the cemetery and from the cemetery to the house, and so nobody will think twice about it. So in spite of all this confidentiality, in spite of all this sharing of the secret, Babu kept to his own post as the servant, and Lentina behaved exactly like his mistress, that is mistress of the house. So in spite of this gap between the servant and the mistress, there was a kind of a togetherness, there was a sharing of the feelings, and even without Lentina telling him, Babu knows how Lentina had craved for a laburnum tree and its flowers. So he knows how much she will be desirous of having this tree bloom before her death. He wanted his mistress to live longer, that is a fact, but he longed to give the good news with the next year's bloom, not this year's bloom. And then you will find that Lentina treated him with civility and kindness, and that is the magnanimous heart of a mistress. She knows how to treat him properly, and it is a master-servant relationship, of course, and Babu never tried to overstep that mark, and Lentina also never tried to go over the other side, because she needs him for certain things, like driving the car and taking her where she wanted to go, and having someone to keep her secret, to get things done. And he did this beautifully. So it was a master-servant relationship itself, but the mistress treated her with civility and kindness. And after her husband's down, she broke down these barriers of civility and kindness, and there is now a turning towards this servant for help. And even by the looks of the mistress, Babu will understand what she really wanted from him. And so, from dutiful service to a friend and then to a confidant, this is the way the relationship changed. And the short story writer is emphasizing that aspect, dutiful service. From that dutiful service, he obeys all their orders and everything. But from that to a friend, because she had confided in him a secret, and then to a confidant, because she wanted something from him, to ask his son-in-law to get some orders and things like that. So from that it was changed imperceptibly, very quietly, without even noticing it. And outwardly, the protocol of the servant master mistress protocol remained the same, but Lendina's dependence on Babu increased day by day, because if she wants to drive around, there should be Babu to drive the car, and often she did that. And when she was so sick, Babu just waited outside her room just to see her coming out, just to listen to her moving around or get news from the nurse. The sons and their wives noticed this kind of dogged devotion from Babu, and they approved this aspect, because they now felt that they need not wait on this old mother-in-law, and they can have their own life, and he can have and she can have her own life with Babu to help her out. So they really approved of this kind of a relationship. This is for a strong-willed woman and her faithful servant. This is between a strong-willed woman and her faithful servant, because the daughters-in-law knows quite well that they can't take care of the mother-in-law. They have their own household to look after, and moreover they don't want to intrude on that life. And if their husband goes around to the mother, they felt that they'll be their husbands will be there for a long time. They don't want that. So their home life was not disrupted, and for the smooth flowing of things, it is necessary that their mother-in-law need someone to help her out, and that someone was Babu. And her dependence on Babu increased day by day with the approval of the family. So the next New Year, that is during the winter time, Lendina was tired, because last winter she was on the brink of death, and somehow or other her survival was based on a lot of things. Her intense desire to see Lebanon flowering, and it is that which made her pull up from that extreme situation. And this year she was tired, and her family watched her keenly. They observed her. They made sure that she has all the comfort, she is looked after carefully, everything, and they never left her alone, because someone or the other was always with her. And then came March, the warm March, which found her on the move. So the winter over, the sun's rays made her steady once again and warm again, and she was on the move. She is moving about, and then she wanted to go out for a car ride. At first the sons refused that, and when with the permission of the doctor, they allowed her to go for a car ride, but not every day, but twice a week, and that too in good weather. And not only that, she can't go alone, her maid would go with her in the car. That was the condition, and with that condition she can go for a ride twice a week if the weather is good. That condition, and she should be followed by her maid in the car, because they are really being careful. They knew that she is weak, she needs the help of a maid. Even though she has got immense willpower, that willpower alone will not take her to places. She wants to go for a ride in the car, and with the Babu driving the car, it is okay for her to go, but the maid will be always there in the car. And so Lendina had to accept this proposal, this idea put forward by her family. She accepted it, because if she just do not accept it, she will have to remain in the room. She can't go out. And so she went for a ride and returned a much happier person after these outings. That is, twice a week in good weather, accompanied by her maid, she can go in the car. And that was something that she had to concede, because every day she wants to go, but this is not the done thing. And knowing her condition, this was indeed a sensible enough advice for her. And after the ride, she returned home a much happier person, and this was something that the family really approved of, because she is happy, there is someone to take care of her with her, and of course there is the driver, and the maid will make sure that she just will not exert herself. And in the car, or riding in the car, she can see the place outside, and her outside of her room, outside of her house, she will be able to see the nature itself and enjoy that ride all for herself. So the condition was accepted by Lendina. And then color returned to her pale face. She was so pale because she was so weak during the winter time this year, because from the previous winter she had narrowly escaped and death, and now that was a slow recovery for her, because she is old and she is now weak, and the slow recovery had taken almost 1 year. And when the winter came, she was weak once again, and that's why the family was extremely careful about her, watching her all the time. And when she was recovered enough to return to her ride, they insisted that she be accompanied by her maid, and twice a week, if the weather is good, she can ride. And after the ride, she returned home a happy person, and color returned to her pale face, but she became quiet. And the reason for her quietness, that is, on returning from these rides, she remained in her room until dinner time. And then May came. There was a visible change in Lendina's condition, and the doctor's advice was that the outing should be twice a week, not more. But somehow or other Lendina was agitated, and Babu spoke to her that the plants are well and that he hoped they will bloom that year. He drove by the new cemetery, but no flowers, and contrary to her expectations, other trees in the town started blooming. And after each outing, instead of returning a happy person, Lendina returned a disappointed person, and then she, who insisted that she must go out every day, now said that she doesn't want to go outside. And the reason no one can understand. Babu can. And in a way you find that Lendina was disappointed, so very disappointed. All around her the trees are in bloom, and there is that happy occasion enough, and still there is no news from, or nothing from her Lebanon. And in a way she was really agitated, because she thought that this is a last resort to have a Lebanon bloom, and in that plot of land, at least not in her garden, it's not happening. And so naturally she'll have to find some other place. That's why she found this place of the cemetery. At least at her grave, let this Lebanon bloom. Even though Babu gave her reports that the plant is doing well, she was not happy, because this time it should have really bloomed, because all the other trees in the town, they are in bloom. It is a spring season, and it is almost a summer season, because there is no clearly defined spring, summer, autumn, winter, autumn winter season in India, only in very rare countries. And in these hilly areas, that is in the northeast, you can find the intense winter, and then there is that summer, then there is the rainy season, and then again a sort of autumn season, and then winter again. So this spring come summer is the season where you have the flowers coming up, and the other trees in town, they are in bloom. And Lendina was much disappointed, and after seeing this, she refused to go out. The one person who insisted that she must go out every day, and she was restrained by she was restricted by the doctor, and this restraint was too much for her. But even then she had to accede to that. She is to agree to that, because that is the only way she will be able to go out. Moreover, she had to take a maid with her. That also she agreed, because she really wanted to go outside and to see her plant. But somehow or other she was so disappointed, and after that she refused to go out. And late in the month of May, when all the trees are in bloom, and everywhere you will find everything in bloom, the flowers, flowering season. And here in our country also, in our place also, you will find that it's a flowering season. That is April and May. They are the best seasons. April with its intense heat, it's a time, ideal time for laburnum to bloom. And towards the end of April, from you will find all the plants blooming. Babu found the miracle that they had been praying for. That is late in the month of May. Laburnum with buttery yellow blossoms. The driver gave a shout of joy on seeing this buttery yellow blossoms. You ought to know the happiness only if you nurture a plant. This kind of happiness, the driver gave a shout of joy. You feel like shouting with joy only if you nurture a plant and see it blossom. Okay, and this is why the driver was so happy for not just for himself but for his mistress, and also for the tree, because this tree had not been blooming for a long time, and last time it was a small spring. And returned to give the news to his mistress. He wanted to shout with joy, and very quietly he returned home, and he was trying to see how to give it to her, how to give this message to her. So, controlling all his happiness, all his joy, he dutifully knocked at her door and immediately got a reply. Come in, Babu, I have been waiting for you. I have been waiting for you. As if she knew what he is going to tell her. Babu was really surprised, because how could the mistress know that it is he who is knocking? Maybe she knew, but even then, why was she waiting for him? He started to speak, but she stopped him, because she had already guessed what Babu was trying to tell her. And she says, or the author says, she felt it in her bones. That is a phrase, felt it in her bones, that today I am going to get some good news. The good news is that it is going to bloom, or it is going to blossom. The laburnum will be in blossom that day. And she felt it in her bones, means that kind of a feeling, that kind of an attachment she had with the plant, this particular plant. Lendina was already dressed for a grand occasion. She did not go just like that. She dressed for as if she is going for a grand occasion. It is indeed a grand occasion for her, much, much grander than any other occasion. Her personal aspects aside, this is the time that she had been waiting for all her life. The blossom in her little yard, and that too in her cemetery, the yard to bury her. And she was already dressed for a grand occasion, and the maid who is to accompany her, she is also ready, because the mistress is dressing up and she needed help with the dressing. The maid did that, and the maid is also getting ready. She is also ready to accompany her, because without the maid, Ledina can't get out of the house and can't go for a drive, because that is what her family insisted on. They knew that she is weak. She took a walking stick and started walking from her room. She doesn't want anyone to carry her. She wants to have a dignified enough walk to her laburnum, and so she doesn't want to hold on to anyone's hand or anyone's arm. Instead, she took a walking stick and she started walking. The bewildered driver Babu and the dazed maid followed the old lady. They had not expected Lendina to behave in this manner. They thought that she'll be dazed or she'll be happy, but even before he could speak out as to why he is there, she told him that she had felt it in her bones. I know why you are here, and let's go. That's what she said. And before going out, she dressed herself as if though she is going for a grand occasion. And the maid just can't understand how her weak mistress could have so much of stamina, so much of energy in her, and they just couldn't say anything. So this bewildered driver and the dazed maid followed the old lady. Only Lendina and Babu knew what this signified, because this maid is someone new. She had not gone with her to the cemetery to see this laburnum planted, or she was not part of the secret. So only Lendina and Babu shared the secret, and they knew that this outing is significant. And what does it signify? It means the dream coming to flower. Both Babu and Lendina in a somber mood on reaching the cemetery, and only the maid exclaimed on seeing the profuse buttery flowers of the laburnum tree, because she was so ecstatic to see the beauty of the laburnum. And Babu and Lendina didn't exclaim. They were in a somber mood. And I think you have earlier listened to Babu thinking aloud, and also Lendina, because she is just waiting to see this plant bloom. And she is already weak, and the family thinks that she had just miraculously survived, and that miraculous survival is just because of this laburnum. She was just waiting for it to bloom before giving up. And so here you find that Lendina was in a somber mood on reaching there. Babu was also in a somber mood. And only the maid exclaimed at the beauty of laburnum. And finally, after this visit, they drove to the park, and there they took a rest and had tea and snacks, because the drive and the emotion of seeing this laburnum in bloom in her yard at last had really made her so weak that she needed some nourishment. She is old also, old and weak. So they took rest in the park, took tea and snacks. The maid served her, and then they returned home. Lendina thanked her maid and Babu for taking both their hands. Usually you thank your servants in words, but this time Lendina took Babu's hand, thanked him, took the maid's hand, and thanked her for accompanying her. Actually, they are servants doing the duty that is asked of them. And now she is behaving not just as maid and driver, but as fellow companions or even friends. And this was an unusual gesture from the mistress. Though she is civil towards them, though she is friendly towards Babu and shared her secret plans with him, all these are there, but this kind of a personal touch was not there in their relationship. And for the maid also, this was indeed something new. And the two of them were really overwhelmed by this action of Lendina. And that day, because of the emotional tiredness of finally seeing the dream come true, Lendina stayed in her room for most of the week. Not just that day, but most of the week she remained in her room. And what did she do in her room? The author Temsila says she tidied up her room all by herself. It is a room which is neat and tidy, but even then, somehow or other, she is leaving all those things. She had already given her jewelry to her daughters-in-law, and there is a general reconciliation, a kind of peace coming up. And now she is tidying up all her room all by herself. On the fifth day, she called her maid to help her with a bath and also dressing her up. And the maid did that, because the maid is employed to do that. Usually she does take a bath and she dresses and she manages. But this time she asked her maid to help her with a bath and also with her dress. And then she had dinner and she went to sleep. the maid also was at peace. And the next morning, the maid knocked at the door. There was no answer. And again she knocked. Again there was no answer. So the maid just opened the door, and she found that Lendina was stretched on the bed. Very coolly she was lying on the bed, and she was sleeping soundly. But when the maid asked her whether she needs tea or something, there was no answer. So the maid came over and touched her, and she also called for the others. They all came along, and they found that Lendina had been dead for some time. And this was too much for them. She had died in her sleep. And in a way, you feel that this is maybe a kind of an imaginary kind of story, maybe, but this is something that can happen to human beings. So the short story writer Temsila Ao is narrating here something that a woman will do if she gets the end of her life. Because when this premonition that she felt in her bones that the laburnum had bloomed, that kind of feeling, maybe she had that feeling. So this is why she kept to her room for most of the week, that is 5 days. And on the 5th day, she called her maid to help her with a bath and dress. That is, before your death, you prepare yourself. And if you can, if you are really moving around, if not, the others will prepare you for that. And having a bath and dress is something that you do. And it is said that every day when we go to sleep, sleep is like a death. This is what Dunn says. So here you find that before you go to sleep, you clean your kitchen, and mothers are so insistent that it must be neat and clean. And why do they insist on that? One, for neatness, and the other is that if something happens to you in your sleep, then when the people come, they must see that everything is in good condition and everything is neat and tidy. And in the same manner, Lendina prepared herself. The maid had no idea why she is preparing like this. It is just a bath and a dress. She did that, and she had dinner also. There is nothing wrong with her about having dinner. And the next morning, the maid knocked, and she couldn't get any answer, and so she went over and opened the door and found Lendina stretched on the bed. She seemed to be sleeping, but she was already dead. And the maid called, had no answer for the maid's words, and all the others came along because the maid started shouting, and they understood that she died in her sleep. In a way, this is the ending of the undramatic life of an ordinary woman. Undramatic life of an ordinary woman. But we know that it is dramatic, and she is no ordinary woman. Maybe she is ordinary by all standards, but to us readers, when the short story writer narrates a story in this manner, it is an extraordinary woman with a dramatic life, and that dramatic life is going to end. Even though the wording is like this, ending of the undramatic life of an ordinary woman, we'll have to reread it in a different manner. That is, an extraordinary woman having a dramatic life, and the end to her dramatic life. She had only one passionate wish, and that is what made the whole drama in her life. And that passionate wish was to have a humble laburnum tree which should bloom once a year on her crown. When she is buried, the tree is at the crown, at the head, and that was the only wish she had. And why at her head? Because she had tried several times to cultivate the same plant in her garden, and it was all futile attempts. Not once but 3 times she did, and all taken away. And so she had to concede to fate that somehow or other she is not lucky with the laburnum tree. But after the death of her husband, she again had that feeling that she should have a laburnum tree, and it should bloom once a year on her crown. It blooms only once a year, and that it should be at her crown. And you must also remember that only a woman can do that. That is, she had donated the land, not donating the land, but insisting that the people who are to be buried there should not have a stone tombstone, a stone. Instead, they should have plants, any plant they can have, preferably flowering plant. And this is why she had insisted on that. And the people were also happy to find that there is an alternative to the other crowded cemetery, and naturally people followed suit. This is why you find that particular section of the cemetery is filled with all types of trees and flowering trees and others. And this laburnum remains. This is the only laburnum tree in that cemetery, and she had this feeling that she should have a laburnum tree at her crown, and it should bloom at least once a year. Every May, this wish is fulfilled, because laburnum blooms in May in their part of the country, especially in Northeast. In our country, it is in April. Maybe towards the end of even February onwards, it starts blooming. February, March, and even April. And by the time end of March in our country it starts blooming, we know that it is time for Vishu. So this is connected to that. So when the summer is intense, this blossom will come up, and it's buttery yellow color and the variation of that golden color, which is more like the gold. And so somehow or other there is an attachment to this particular bloom. And every May this wish of Lentina is fulfilled. And the author says, you just turn around in the new cemetery, of course, not the old one. You will not find a single stone monument. Instead, you will find flowering bushes all around in their own seasons, because some bushes will flower maybe after 2-3 months, or even continuously throughout the year, and some once in a year, and so many types, so many varieties, so that at all times of the year there will be flowers in the cemetery, and they have their own seasons. You find hibiscus, gardenia, bottle brush, camellia, oleander, and some croton bushes, the leafy trees with all the different colors of all, croton bushes of all hues, all colors. You must have seen them: green, red, maroon, yellow, all these colors. That in itself, even if it is not flowers, that colors, different colors of the leaves itself is decorative to the garden and also to the cemetery. And of course Jacaranda, Ashoka and banyan trees also. But there is only one laburnum. The others had not found it in them to have a laburnum. They were not crazy to have a laburnum. They preferred either hibiscus, bottlebrush, gardenia, so many other flowers to choose from. And you will find that in that particular new cemetery there is only one laburnum. And here you find that it is liberation from all human pretensions to immortality. This woman did not pretend to have immortality, or she doesn't want her name to be immortalized on stone like the other cemetery, and also the glory that is there decorated on the stone, or inscribed on the stone. And this is a liberation from all human pretensions to immortality, because trees bloom, and when the time is over they will be dead and gone, and some other trees will come up, and from the seeds of the laburnum another laburnum plant will be coming up. So many things will happen. So she is not trying to make herself immortal after her death, because we all feel that our name or our deeds should be immortalized by either by our relatives, or if they don't take the initiative, we try to make ourselves immortal by doing this and that, even inscribing our name on such and such things and things like that. So in this cemetery there is a total liberation from all such human pretensions to immortality, because you will not find the name of the person inscribed on a stone. You will not find a tombstone, because that was what she insisted on. If you want, you can have a number there. And the number, if you refer to the register in the town committee, you will find all the details of the person dead and buried under that number, under that tree, let's say, or the plant. And you can have that if you want to know of that person. Why should you know of those people? There are so many people dead and gone, and they are trying to make themselves immortalized by having these inscriptions. If you want to be immortalized by your relatives, they can bury you in the other cemetery, but not in this cemetery. She was insistent. That was one of the rules, one of the terms that she insisted on, and these terms are to be made public, so that people should know that if you are going to be buried in that particular cemetery, you will not have a tombstone but only a plant. And people agreed to that. You will find that the new cemetery is now filled with all types of bushes and flowering bushes all the time, all the year round, and even croton bushes of all hues, and some trees, Jacaranda, Ashoka and banyan tree, all these are there. But there is only one labor. And so every May something extraordinary happens in that cemetery, and that extraordinary thing is the blooming of, or the blossoming of, the laburnum tree. Lendina's wish, when Lendina's dream, Lendina who craved for passionate wish, not just any wish, passionate wish. This is why it is said that in The Alchemist it is said that if you wish passionately for something to happen, the whole world will come to help you in their own way. And you may not express your passionate wish to them, but somehow or other, when you just choose the path, all the others will come to help you out. And that is true in the case of Lendina also. So this is one passionate wish, and that too to have a humble, the term used here is humble laburnum tree. How this tree can be humble, we have no idea, but the way it just has its blooms coming down, or bowing down instead of going up. Maybe it is that which makes the other short story writers say that it's a humble laburnum tree, or maybe it is because of the fact that it is not a pretentious tree, nor does it cost too much. It is just an ordinary thing, ordinary tree, and that too which blooms once in a year. Maybe because of that, because it blooms only once in a year, people are not having that kind of patience to have it in their yard. So if it blooms only once a year, why should we have that? There are other plants which will be blooming more than almost continuously throughout the year. Maybe 1 or 2 months they may not bloom, but other times they are in bloom. So it is better to have that, people will say. But here this lady was insistent about this laburnum and the blossoms for her crown, nothing more. She doesn't want tombstone which cost maybe thousands and tens of thousands of money amount, but nothing like that. Only this laburnum tree, and that too nourished by her driver and herself. She had picked and chosen the tree and also the land, and now this is her last wish, and this is also her maybe the last time that she will be able to have her wish fulfilled. And all the other, she had to live with the disappointment of not having a laburnum tree in her garden, and the disappointment was intense, and the people also had started noticing and making fun of her or making remarks about it. So she had to give up that, and this insistence came when she visited the cemetery again. If it is not blooming in her garden, why not have it in the cemetery? And especially not this crowded stony cemetery, but a cemetery where they will be having only plants, nothing stony or monumental. And this is the only wish that she had. So when the author, that is the Temsula Ao, says that this is the ending of an undramatic life of an ordinary woman, we'll have to redraft it and say that this is the dramatic life of an ordinary woman, or an extraordinary woman, a woman who had one passionate wish which she held on to, and she had that wish fulfilled, and she suddenly gave up on life. And it is not like committing suicide or anything, it is just she was holding on to life with her willpower and with this passionate wish, and somehow or other, as I told you earlier, the fates and the whole world will be with her to see that her wish is fulfilled. And once that wish is fulfilled, she has nothing more to live for. She just give up on her life. For 5 days she prepared herself, preparing her room, keeping it neat and tidy, having a proper bath with the help of a maid, and then dressing properly, having dinner, lying herself neatly on the bed, and without any dramaticality, very calmly, her life just gave up from her, and while sleeping she died. And so here you find that this cemetery is the one place where there is total liberation from all human pretensions to immortality. And on this particular grave of Lendina, on every May, something extraordinary happens. The buttery yellow flowers of laburnum blooms, and it bows down, looking down, and that was the only laburnum tree in that cemetery. And here you find that that Lendina finally had her wish fulfilled, and with the help of her driver. So here, dear students, you are in a way being led by this woman Lendina, and what makes a woman continue with her life. And we can't say that it is feminism or anything, it is just, let's not place too many words or too many sums to it, just accept it as the story of a woman. And even though she had everything, she had a house full of servants, and she had a car and a driver and sons to look after her, even though her husband is dead and gone. Even though she was the mistress of the house, she was just the mistress of the house, looking after everything, maybe more like a glorified housekeeper, and nothing more than that. She was not given that freedom to go alone to the cemetery and things like that. But even in spite of those limitations, in spite of those restrictions, in spite of the futility of telling the others that she wanted only a laburnum tree and being laughed at by the others, in spite of all this, she was able to get her wish fulfilled. And this is why we can say that it was a dramatic life, and that of an extraordinary woman. Lendina was an ordinary woman, described as an ordinary woman, but towards the end we feel that she was indeed an extraordinary woman. And with that note, let me end the beautiful short story, Labor Now for My Head by Temsilao. Thank you.